Women, this is a branch off from the missing and murdered women. We're just adding on the men too.
Data shows in 2020, Indigenous men were 4 times more likely to be victims of homicide than Indigenous women, and 7 times more likely than non-Indigenous people. Last year, the federal government announced almost $96 million in new funding for families of missing and murdered Indigenous people. Marches at this year's event are calling for more.
We're bringing awareness to the men is just because it gets a little bit overlooked when it's compared to the missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls.
They're also pushing for changes that improve reporting and investigation when a loved one disappears or is killed.
We're just here to seek justice for their names and make sure they're known and not overlooked or not heard.
Saurabh Sandhu, CBC News, Vancouver.
4 years late and still not built. A new North Shore wastewater treatment plant is confounding Metro Vancouver. It is now 5 times over budget and an infrastructure headache for both taxpayers and politicians. Chad Pawson has more on how it's all gone so wrong.
This is the North Shore's new wastewater treatment plant, not even half complete, despite a promise to be operational in 2020. Its original cost, $700 million. Now that's ballooned to more than 5 times as much, nearly $4 billion. Taxpayers are on the hook, with North Shore households set to pay an extra $590 a year for 30 years. Households across the rest of Metro Vancouver will also have to pay more, between $80 and $150 extra dollars in property taxes for 15 years. Mayors of the North Shore's 3 municipalities admit the financial burden isn't sitting well with their constituents.
Well, obviously it's an enormous disappointment, a huge challenge that I guess we didn't realize 2 years ago even that it was going to be so difficult.
So, how could this happen? Well, for several reasons, says the regional government. Its original contractor was terminated in 2021 after rising costs and construction delays. The long timeline exposed the project to inflation and made it harder to find materials and labor. Design plans also needed corrections. The regional government's commissioner says, quote, "The reality is the cost to deliver the program has changed significantly since its initial estimate 13 years ago." Some local politicians are refusing to accept the huge new cost and expanded timelines. They're asking the province for an audit of the project. Meanwhile, Metro Vancouver says its new plan is viable, with work to be done here by 2030. Chad Pawson, CBC News, North Vancouver.
As we told you on Thursday night, Vancity says it is laying off 7% of its staff, or almost 200 employees. It follows a year of losses and rising costs. Its CEO, Wellington Holbrook, says the credit union needs to restructure to meet current market conditions and invest in growth. Its 2023 annual report says Vancity ended the year with a net loss of $1.3 million after tax. Holbrook says while the rise in interest rates over the past few years has been a challenge, the layoffs were part of a larger need for change.
When you look at the traditional means of banking, in-branch transactions, for example, have been dropping for years. Many banks and other credit unions have announced layoffs over the last couple of years as a result of those changes. And if anything, Vancity is perhaps a little bit late.
The BC General Employees Union represents more than 800 Vancity workers. It says the layoffs came without consultation from them. The province says it is providing some farmers access to technology that is meant to help boost production and strengthen our food security. As Michelle Morton learned, it's meant to automate tasks that can be done by machines.
Sander Farms is one of the producers to get some costs covered for new technology to use in its apple orchard.
And these are the arms for the apple picking. So it extends out. 2 people are going to be over here. The other 2 are going to be on the other platform, and 2 people are going to be on the ground.
They say this fruit picking platform creates safer working conditions and will help cut down the cost of labor, as well as reduce potential damage to the fruit.
They don't have to use the letters and the bags, and it's more tiring when you're working for 10 hours a day, picking apples and doing the same thing. It takes a toll on your body.
Innovate BC is the Crown agency delivering the BC On-Farm Technology Adoption Program and says farmers applied to receive funding.
So it was an application-based program. Farmers submitted directly into us with their proposed activity and scope of work that they were going to be doing.
Schindel says it sees some farms getting up to 65% of new technology costs covered with a cap of $150,000. Some of that technology, she says, can assist workers as well as reduce some labor depending on what the need is.
Offshoot the things that are more repetitive, labor-intensive activities like weeding, and cover those with robotic technologies, and being able to then allow people who are labor do things that are of higher value.
As for how this could affect the future of job opportunities for seasonal and temporary workers, advocates say it's too soon to know.
How many agriculture employers are using it and how that impacts, because they can also train their workers to do this.
Schindel says a similar pilot program will be announced closer to the fall to try to help more producers like Sander Farms. Michelle Morton, CBC News, Vancouver.
Pop sensation Taylor Swift has confirmed her record-breaking Eras tour will end in December, presumably with 3 final shows here in Vancouver. Swift is set to play BC Place on December 6th, 7th, and 8th. Right now, those are the only dates booked that month, meaning the year-and-a-half-long tour could officially end in our province. Swift kicked off the tour last March in the U.S. and has since performed in Mexico, South America, Australia, Asia, and Europe.
That right now there isn't another city booked after that. It looks like it could end right here in our city. So it'd be an amazing boost for, I think, people just to enjoy it, and but also for the economy. Her tour has grossed more than $1 billion, and clearly there's going to be a lot of people that are going to want to come into town to see that concert.
As the councillor said, Swift is expected to bring a serious economic boost to Vancouver, something that's happened in other cities she has performed in. One Toronto business professor estimates that Swift's 6-concert run in that city would generate as much as $700 million. But there are questions about where fans will stay here in Vancouver, given the shortage of hotel rooms and prices.
It's like housing. As you have less rooms, your hotel prices get more expensive, right? You have less places to live. The rents don't get cheaper either. So we do need to be building more rooms.
When Swift's Vancouver dates were announced last year, the province said it would reach out to hotels to discuss fair pricing after one fan was quoted over $3,500 for 2 nights in a downtown hotel. A BC park is going to expand to help protect caribou herds. Take a look. Clinsissa Park is almost 1,100 kilometers north of Vancouver, just west of Chetwynd. A protection zone of around 2,000 square kilometers is going to be added to that park. That's due to a 2020 partnership between BC and the Saulteaux and West Moberly First Nations. The province says caribou numbers have fallen by more than 55% in the last century, mostly due to humans disturbing their habitats. Officials now say there are fewer than 4,000 of the mountain species caribou left. Here's a timely reminder to close and lock your doors and make sure any food or garbage is secured. The bears are out and about. Coquitlam RCMP says some homeowners got quite a start after 6 a.m. Thursday when they found a black bear stuck in their garage near Prairie Avenue and Coast Meridian Road in Port Coquitlam. It's believed the animal got in through an open or unlocked side door that then closed behind it. It tried to paw its way out, ripping apart the automatic garage door system in the process. Eventually, though, Mounties reopened that side door, coaxed the bear out, and off it took into a green space. No one was hurt, thankfully, but there was a lot to clean up. The RCMP says it gets plenty of bear calls this time of year as more people encroach on the animals' habitats. New earthquake research is giving us a clearer look about what the big one might look like here on the West Coast. As Lindsay Duncombe explains, while it could be more damaging than first predicted, the data could help BC prepare.
Using cables and sound waves, scientists now have a clearer picture of what the big one, a massive earthquake off North America's west coast, could look like.
We're able to image deeper and with better resolution.
Canadian scientist Suzanne Carbot was part of a 41-day mission to map the Cascadia subduction zone. That's the 1,000-kilometer fault that runs from Cape Mendocino, California, to northern Vancouver Island. Her research found the fault is actually broken into distinct segments under the ocean floor, and the northern part, closest to British Columbia, is smoother and flatter than the rest.
Those are characteristics that are conducive for the most damaging earthquakes.
A shift of tectonic plates in the Cascadia zone is capable of producing huge earthquakes, up to magnitude 9. The last time it happened was in 1700, so scientists believe we're due.
When it happens, the ground shaking is going to be violent. The tsunami wave is going to be huge. So we do need to think about how we can better prepare.
This seismologist says the new data also indicates an earthquake off BC's coast could happen closer to the surface, shortening warning time. He anticipates this research will help communities plan.
We can think about what those earthquakes might look like and sort of build a scenario.
The research will also help modelers understand how a tsunami might hit, indicating where it's safe to build.
This information of where the ocean plate is, how it's dipping, how shallow it is, how smooth it is, that feeds directly into our ability to generate and model tsunamis.
Although the new maps show what an earthquake might look like, they don't indicate when it could happen. Some of the Earth's mysteries, even the most sophisticated science, can't yet reveal. Lindsay Duncombe, CBC News, Vancouver.
Let's bring in Darius Madabi for a first look at the weather and more on those plates.
Yes, so we saw a really nice map of them there, so I'm not going to belabor this too much, but yeah, we have this plate subducting, going under the North American plate, and because it's right off the coast here, we get a lot of seismic activity, as people, especially on the island, know all too well. Now, if you take a look at this, you can understand why that's actually happening. You can see that one plate, the one Defuca plate, passing underneath the North American plate. And as it does that, the North American plate gets stressed, it gets pushed, it gets stretched, and eventually it just snaps. And when it snaps back into position, it releases all that energy, and we get that earthquake, we get that seismic activity. And so the more energy builds up, the more intense that earthquake is, bringing tsunamis up to 30 meters high. Oof. That's what could be expected when this eventually happens. Take a look here also, though, at the amount of seismic activity we do get, because a lot of those are not going to be those major earthquakes. A lot of it is just smaller stuff. But what this study really found is that because the segment of this fault up near us, because they learned it's segmented, is so smooth and so sort of shallow, that means that we are probably going to get the worst of a big earthquake when it comes, because there it's easiest for that energy to build up. Now, that's not going to happen anytime soon. What might happen pretty soon is the fact that we have some weather warnings in place. If you're going on the mountain passes tonight, I know that's not what we're showing here, but if you're going on the mountain passes tonight, be aware up to 5 centimeters of snow expected, because temperatures and freezing levels are dropping as that precipitation moves in. And also worth noting, up in the Peace and up by Fort Nelson, 40 to 50 millimeters of rain expected, which might sound like good news on the surface, but given drought conditions, it does mean the possibility of some local flooding. So be aware of that, and we'll have more information, including here on the South Coast, later this hour.
Sounds good. Thanks, Darius.
Thank you.
People experiencing homelessness in Victoria will soon be able to get more support from a new facility. It's owned and operated by Solid Outreach Society. While the city is providing funding to have it run for at least a year, people will be able to get food, harm reduction, and overdose prevention services, and get help for long-term health issues, detox treatment, and housing.
Best work we've done has been in between all the silos of funding, like between housing, health, recovery, treatment, harm reduction. Somewhere in the middle is the magic piece of the work that we're doing. And it's often hard to do all the things people need based on any of those silos.
Up to 50 people can be served at a time from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. The site is being renovated, and they hope to be open in July. Men still make up more than half of toxic drug deaths in BC. But the coroner finds the death rate for women is growing, nearly doubling since 2020. In response, the Women and Family Centre Union Gospel Mission is providing space and support for different stages of recovery, from immediate stabilization to longer-term family housing, as well as childcare. Our Michelle Elliott visited them to learn more.
So what we're seeing here is the room for mom with baby when she first enters stabilization and recovery. So when she gets here, if it's a woman who is an individual woman, she'll enter into our sanctuary stabilization program. And so that is kind of like the very beginning of recovery. And one of the things that we have learned over the course of working with many men and women in addictions recovery is that a lot of times, in order to truly focus on recovery, you kind of need to stabilize first. And what that means is, do you have a bank account? Have you experienced chronic homelessness and you don't have clothes, you don't have a toothbrush, you don't have all of those things? And so we work with the women for up to 3 months, making sure that she's stabilized in that capacity before her true recovery journey begins. And then that's when the trauma-informed care really begins and the deep work really begins.
A woman staying here can spend up to 6 months working on healing from trauma and addiction. The Women and Family Center has 7 floors. It's uniquely designed to support women through different stages of recovery. The upper floors offer a longer-term home, along with supports like childcare.
What does that tell you about the barriers specifically for women in recovery?
I've met countless women who have talked about being so ready to seek recovery, so ready to take that step in their lives, and then being so scared of what would happen if they said that they were struggling because they had kids at home. Would they lose their children? And what would that look like? And we know scientifically that for parents, if they're struggling with addiction and then their children are taken away from them as an aspect of their recovery, their chances of actually like being able to recover well and have that be a part of their lifelong journey, they diminish rapidly. And so having places like this where it's like, okay, you've got a baby, that's okay, bring your baby with you, we will help you. That can completely change a woman's outlook and her ability to actually seek recovery and seek it long term. So now what we're going to go into is what a housing unit looks like for a woman who might have been reunified with her children and is further on in her recovery journey. All of the baby stuff is provided. There's often like little toys, and we do try to get to know them before they move in a little bit so we can fill this even more.
I imagine people may not understand how crucial having your own home can be in the road to recovery.
Yeah, well, and when you think about the road to recovery too, I think it's just so perhaps misunderstood what a journey it is, and that reoccurrence can happen often when women or men are first in part of their recovery, and that as they continue on that road to recovery, the longer they maintain it, the smoother the road gets. And so once they get to that 5-year mark where, you know, we hope most women who live here get to, their chances of having reoccurrence, of having a really devastating relapse, they almost completely diminish. And so that is part of why we built the building the way that we did. Like, it's a very emotional thing. I've worked here for 8 years. I started here when my firstborn was 10 months old. I don't think I recognized what a privilege it was to have a safe space for me and my baby to go and to be through the sleepless nights, through all of those struggles. We need to have spaces like this for women to come and for their children to come, because this isn't just a woman's life that's being changed, it's generational change, it's community change, because those cycles are being broken, which means that hopefully little baby that comes in here from fur isn't gonna come here when she's 20. You know, maybe she's gonna go to university and she's gonna get to do all of these things because her mom made the hard choice and did the hard work. And she did it because there was a community here to hold her up. I get like so emotional. Like,
Father's Day can be hard for people without fathers and father figures in their lives. Coming up, we're going to hear from an organization that aims to help with that. As we head into Father's Day this weekend, many of us are reflecting on the male role models in our lives. These relationships can be especially important for young people. That's the need Big Brothers of Greater Vancouver fills. It aims to provide mentorship and supports for kids who do not have fathers or father figures and those who just want another supportive person in their lives. Joining us now is Norman Galimski. He's the Marketing, Communications and Recruitment Officer for Big Brothers of Greater Vancouver. He joins us in studio. We really appreciate you doing this. And on a big weekend, what sort of programs and gaps does Big Brothers provide?
Thanks for having me. We provide mentorship programs for boys and girls and all genders. It's mostly kind of being that friend that's not in that power position, not a teacher, not a parent, not like a counselor. It's kind of being that friend you can rely on, and really that mentorship happens in the background and has a lot of positive effects for youth's lives.
So even if there is an age or experience, life experience, we can call it that, imbalance, the idea is that you're more of a friend, colleague, equal? Is that what you're aiming for?
They're definitely friendships, and that's how our bigs and our littles would describe them. That's how I would describe them. And it really is kind of like having that older cousin or that next door friend or that next door neighbor who really was they're hanging out, they're giving those tidbits of advice, they're having a good time, and it really has a positive impact at the end of the day.
Now, I know this is personal for you, if I may ask. You were part of this mentorship program after when you were young, after your father died. As much as you want to share, if you could take us through that experience, what was it like?
Sure. Big Brothers has several mentorship programs, but I was part of the in-school mentorship program. And that was when I got matched with a big buddy at school. So I had a couple of them, and one that was really impactful was they intentionally matched me with someone who was quite young, about 19 or 20, and they also had a passing of their mother. So that was really good to have that friend who was able to have that shared experience and someone you can talk about something like that nobody else really knows unless you've been in that situation before.
So there's a level of understanding of trauma and what it takes to climb out of that, if that makes sense?
Yeah, it's not so much about climbing out, but it's more just a processing, just a conversation, because these things are real. They're not something that once you're over. It's something that you process at different times in your life differently, and in a healthy way, especially if you have that support from your family or your friends or a mentor, that can really go a long way.
Now, I understand you're a mentor now in this program. Why did you decide to do that?
I was kind of paying it forward. Like, I know that it affected me as a child quite positively, so I've been doing it for the last couple of years in schools around Greater Vancouver. So it's really easy. It's only an hour a week, and you go there and you have fun. You play soccer, or one of my littles, he loves playing in the mud when it's raining, so we'll make like dams in the sand and stuff. So it is mentorship's kind of an intimidating word, but it really is being a friend at the end of the day, and just that mentorship really happens in the background.
Now, we understand during the pandemic there was a lot of demand, and you had to curtail some services. For somebody watching this, wanting to get involved, what sort of demand do you have, and how can they do that?
We always have a demand in all of our communities, but specifically in Surrey, we've had to close our community program. So that's the bread and butter of our programs, where you spend that 2 hours once a week with a buddy in the community, hanging out, going to events. And in Surrey, we've had to close that family intake because we need more than 30 mentors, 30 volunteers. And to open that up, we need people to start signing up to volunteer, and then we can start serving communities in Surrey, because Surrey is the fastest growing community in our region, and we're struggling to keep up. So for those who are looking to give back a little bit, we're always welcome to have those conversations and intentionally match people with a little in their community.
Right. Norman Golimsky, we really appreciate your time and your expertise. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Renowned architect Arthur Erickson's style is sprinkled throughout Vancouver as well as the world. He died in 2009, but his legacy endures, and special attention is being paid to his work today on what would have been his 100th birthday. CBC News spoke with Erickson in 1980.
At the age of 55, Arthur Erickson is an architectural superstar. On the cover of Time magazine, profiled in the New Yorker, Maclean's, the Reader's Digest, feature stories in countless newspapers. Even he has probably lost count of the number of awards and medals he's acquired. A new Erickson building is now a media event. Newspapers and magazines from across the country send their reviewers much in the same way as they would cover the opening of a new film, an opera, or a play. When the new courthouse opened in Vancouver last fall, there was the New York Times architecture critic, Paul Goldberger.
He is an absolutely first-rate architect. Surely the best architect in Canada and one of the leading architects of the world.
Occasionally, one of his buildings is a traditional skyscraper, but his work defies categories. The brilliant original Canadian pavilion at the Osaka World's Fair, like so many of Erickson's buildings, won first prize as the best pavilion. His design for Simon Fraser University in British Columbia was considered a revolutionary concept. His courthouse project, just 15 miles away, was chosen to create a new mood for downtown Vancouver. In Toronto, his new Massey Hall, now under construction, is to cost $40 million, and the mirrored concert hall is to be the showcase of the renewal of the depressed lakefront area. Then there are the Erickson-designed homes. Whether made of wood, concrete, glass, or combinations of all three, his mark is distinctive, spectacular, with the price tag to match.
Certainly now, even $1 million is not that much for a house, which is unfortunate. $30,000 is impossible for a loft, practically. But I think that's the nature of the challenge. I have an absolutely empty mind about buildings, visions, anything else. I don't see anything until I have something to solve. So somebody has to give me a problem.
The investigation into Canada's largest ever gold heist may be coming to an end. After the break, we'll tell you more about one of the suspects and why he's surrendering to police. There's been a development in the largest gold heist in Canadian history. Last spring, $20 million in gold bars and cash were loaded onto a truck near Toronto's Pearson Airport and driven away. Now, as Katie Nicholson tells us, one of the suspects still at large is preparing to turn himself in.
It was the largest gold heist in Canadian history, more than $20 million in gold and foreign currency in this 5-ton truck, stolen from a cargo facility. One of the first people investigators met was an Air Canada manager who gave them a tour. Simranpreet Panesar later became a suspect.
He resigned in the summer of last year, and then we have not been able to locate him since. We have an idea, and I can't speak to where we believe he is right now.
2 months after police announced charges against him, Panesar has resurfaced. In a statement, Panesar's lawyer Greg LaFontaine says his client is voluntarily returning to Canada in the coming weeks and is anxious to have an opportunity to demonstrate his absolute innocence. He says right now, Panesar is tidying up his affairs abroad, but wouldn't say where. But on Wednesday, Panesar messaged CBC News via a WhatsApp business account connected to an Indian mobile number. Before he disappeared, Panesar and his wife Preeti made music videos in Canada, like this one, and were apparently trying to break into the Punjabi entertainment industry. Days before the gold heist charges were announced in April, Preeti, who is not a gold heist suspect, posted pictures from a photo shoot in a city in northern Punjab. She tagged people and businesses in her posts, and CBC News contacted them and sent multiple emails to Preeti's official account. That all led up to the WhatsApp message from the suspect on Wednesday. If Panesar returns to Canada, that leaves just one suspect still in the wind, Arsalan Chowdhury.
The case is still in its early stages and the investigation is ongoing, but across the border, a U.S. arms trafficking trial involving the alleged wheelman in the gold heist is scheduled to begin in September in Pennsylvania. Katie Nicholson, CBC News, Toronto.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi have met at the G7. It is their first encounter since Trudeau accused India of involvement in the assassination of a Sikh nationalist here in BC. 4 Indian nationals since have been arrested and charged with murder. Ashley Burke explains how that day unfolded.
Face to face, but still far apart. The day started with India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi at this G7 meeting with the Pope and other countries, sitting 6 seats away from Justin Trudeau. The closest they had been since Canada's Prime Minister publicly accused India of involvement in the assassination of a Canadian Sikh activist.
Congratulations once again.
Modi, who was denied the claims, made the rounds at the summit, sitting down with other leaders, but not Trudeau. Then late in the day, Modi posted this photo to his 98 million followers on X. Trudeau's office afterward called it an interaction on the margins of the summit, saying in a statement the Prime Minister congratulated Modi on his re-election and had a brief discussion on bilateral issues, adding, "Of course there are important issues between our two countries right now. We won't be making any further statements."
That they spoke, given what has happened over the past year, suggests that there is progress in repairing the relationship.
Good evening, everyone.
Italy's Prime Minister urged countries to come together at this meeting.
We can only deal with the global challenges we are facing if we are able to cooperate with respect and with a peer-to-peer approach.
But the differences between India and Canada run deep. A report by a cross-party panel of MPs and senators last week declared India the second biggest threat behind China when it comes to meddling in Canada's democracy. The G7's final communique says leaders are more concerned than ever before about foreign interference and agreed to bolster the G7's rapid response mechanism to counter threats. Canada also announced it will hold the next G7 summit in Kananaskis, Alberta. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Bari, Italy.
The Grouse grind is a hike that is famously tough for many people. So what happens when we send someone up who's never done it, besides someone who's tackled it 5,000 times? We'll show you after this. Historic rainfall has been pounding southern Florida for days now, unleashing flash flooding in several areas. A state of emergency is in effect in several cities, and some places have seen a month's worth of rain in a few hours. Alexander Silberman has more.
Widespread flooding continued to swamp South Florida. 4 days of unrelenting downpour, leaving homes surrounded by water, making roads impassable, and forcing drivers to abandon cars.
Looked like a beginning to a zombie movie, just cars littered everywhere on top of sidewalks and the median in the middle of the street.
Near Miami, the driver of this vehicle drove into a canal after mistaking it for a road. First responders had to use a crane to pull it out after the driver was able to escape. Heavy rainfall has dumped more than 30 centimeters of rain since Monday, triggering flood watches or warnings for an area where 8 million people live. Some spots reported as much as 60 centimeters of rainfall. The flooded roads made travel hazardous and difficult.
I was on the way to work. I was passing by this area. Everything is fine until it doesn't accelerate no more, and I got stuck here.
Many left their cars behind, wading through flooded streets to get around.
It's too much. Like, it's at least half my calf was underwater.
I didn't want to trudge through the water. The water's filled with just so much pollutants, so I decided to just put 2 garbage bags on, go to the corner store and grab some essentials.
In Fort Myers, patients and workers at a cancer hospital were left stranded, unable to get home because of waist-deep waters.
I've been in Florida 4 years, and I've never seen anything like this.
Officials say hundreds of homes in southeast Florida have been reported damaged. Florida's governor promising cleanup help is on the way.
We've got a lot of resources staged here, and we'll be able to offer the state's assistance as is requested by the local communities.
Although the waters are starting to recede, a flood watch remains in effect for much of South Florida for Friday evening. With the ground extremely saturated, officials warn even small rainfall amounts could cause floodwaters to rise again. Alexander Silberman, CBC News, Regina.
Back in this province, it is not a long hike, just 2.5 kilometers, but it is steep, 800 meters up. There's a good reason the Grouse grind is widely known as one of the toughest hikes you can take on the South Coast. Some here will never tackle it, but one North Shore man has broken a record, finishing it 5,000 times. Our Yasmin Khanea caught up with him on the trail on her first ever grind. On the way up, they spoke about what makes it so alluring and intimidating.
This will be my first time doing the Grouse grind, and Jason Chung's
5,018th.
Woohoo!
All right.
Let's do it.
Okay, let's go. So I got the snacks, I got the water, we got the right shoes.
Do you remember the first time that you did the Grouse grind ever?
Yeah, it was like early 2000s.
Yeah.
I was still in school, and I was part of a hiking club. And it was during springtime, and there was snow on the ground.
Wow.
Just the weather was just not the best, cold. The grind wasn't open at the time,
yeah.
But we still went up, and
wow.
So we got lost. And at the end of it, it took us almost 3 hours to get up there.
Wow.
Yeah. And after that experience, I was just miserable. I did not want to come back again. Yeah, because it's the first time, right?
Yeah.
And then after that, I was in Dragon Boat for a number of years. And so I came back here because of what I liked about the grind was it gave me some cross training.
Right.
It's a different kind of exercise. It's just a workout. A lot of people treat it as a workout.
Yeah.
But if you actually pause and just stop and look around, this is beautiful, nature, Mother Nature, right?
So you still admire it even after you've done it thousands of times?
Yeah, of course. You got to find the, the beauty in what you do, right? So the greenery, the forest. So you stop and look up, and it's like you see all these beautiful fir and pine trees that just shoot straight up, and it's like it takes you to a whole different world, right?
Yeah, go Jason.
Okay, all right.
You're famous now.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Thank
you.
you.
Have a good one. Have a good day.
Yeah. Does that happen a lot?
Yeah, once in a while. There's the thousands of trails out there, right? Amazing trails. And that's another comment I always get is, why do you keep doing the same trail over and over? Like, you know, the other, and so that's the misconception because I do other trails.
Okay, yeah.
You know, there are dozens of other trails all over this mountain.
Yeah.
Which I've done.
Right.
But I always come back to this one because this one's the most efficient way up.
Yeah.
I know exactly what I'm getting, so it's like the McDonald's of trails, right? It's very, very reliable.
Oh my God. Congratulations, you made it to the corner, Mark. That was the easy section. Now comes the hard part. I thought we were already at the hard part.
That was the, that's why they put the sign here, right? So.
It was a very discouraging sign.
But you've done amazing. You've come this far. We're gonna keep going.
Morale is still high.
Yeah.
Woo!
Let's go, come on. Let's go. Yeah, I'm not leaving you behind. We're gonna keep going. Oh, we're doing good. Making good progress. Nice strong steps. There you go. What you're looking at is probably the steepest section of the grind.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah. Okay, let's go.
Let's do it.
Let's do it, let's go. Strong. Nice.
We're so high up. This is a great view.
When you look at that, it's like, wow, did I just do that? Like, that's how high we are right now.
Yeah, worth it.
We're doing great, we're getting close. There you go.
Woo!
Jasmine, first time.
Woo!
Nice job.
Wow.
Wow, so how did it feel?
It feels amazing.
Yeah, there we go. There we go. Yeah.
What's your advice to people who are considering doing the Grouse grind for the first time?
Simple, just do it. Just do it, yeah. My advice is just come out, give it a go, bring a friend, bring a group with you, you know, and just make it a fun, memorable experience.
Have you done it yet, Darius?
No, I didn't want to seem like a tourist when I first got here, so I didn't do it.
Yeah.
But now I don't have that excuse because somebody did it. Somebody's done it 5,000 times and I live here.
5,000 times.
So.
And Yasmin Khalea is down on the list once.
Yeah.
You should ask her if she wants to do it again.
Yeah, you should.
Okay.
All right. Should we talk about the weather?
Let's do it.
There is some serious weather going on, so I did want to show this map of all the weather warnings we do have across the province. Probably the most serious one is the rainfall warning up here, 40 to 50 millimeters expected for parts of the piece. So that is a bit of a concern given the drought conditions. Doesn't mean that that rain can soak into the ground as nicely as it normally could. So good news, but with an asterisk, I would say. Weather statements for some places, again, some rain here. That's the main reason for that warning there. And then for the mountain passes where we do have those weather statements to do with the snow that is on the way. It may also be quite windy at times for parts of the South Island. So be ready for that as well as that next weather system rolls through. But they should start to calm down as we get into the end of the weekend. If we look here, this is where we have that really heavy bit of rain. That's going to continue moving across the province or across the piece. At times into tomorrow, and then start to come down and move into Alberta. For the rest of the province, it's mostly just scattered showers, although there is a risk of a thunderstorm, so there may be locally heavy downpours as well. So be ready for that. As we get into next week, though, things mostly dry up, and we see a bit of a more calm week for much of BC, especially here on the south coast. Now, temperatures are going to fall or stay low or fall more into tomorrow and into Monday as well, although they do slowly start to recover as we get into the end of this or into early next week. So a bit of a sunnier and warmer day on the way, so don't be too worried just yet. In terms of the conditions across the province, again, southern parts of the province blanketed by thunderstorms, including on the island, lower mainland. If you're on the west coast, south island, east coast of the island, be ready for that. And if we take a look here for a 5-day forecast in Vancouver, we do have some nicer days on the way, but we do have to get through a bit of a rainy weekend. Again, thunderstorms possible. So that's a bit of excitement. I love a good thunderstorm, Dan, as you know. And then we do see the sun starting to come out. I think it might be optimistic to say it's going to clear late on Sunday, but it might happen, and I'm holding out hope.
Okay. And it is Friday, so that means... Fun Fact Friday. Darius, you've given me a deck of cards. We playing Ramoli? What are we doing? Go fish? Three-card Monty?
No, Dan, all I want you to do is take out the deck of cards and shuffle them a little bit.
He's right here? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And it doesn't matter how you shuffle.
Well, let's hope nobody's judging me on my technique. There we go. Not great, but there we are. Not bad.
All right, give it a good shuffle. And
there you
now...
go. Oh, and I got to cut it, too.
Yeah, there you go. Doesn't
Just
matter
like
how you
Mama
shuffle
taught me.
Odds are, Dan, you are the only person to ever hold a deck of cards in that order. Same thing with anybody who shuffles a deck of cards, because when you shuffle a deck of cards, given there's 52 cards in it, I don't want to belabor the math too much, but generally speaking, the first time you take a card, you have 52 options, then 51 chances, then 50 chances. And if you do all the math, that is an 8 followed by 67 zeros. That's is more than the number of atoms in and on the Earth.
What?
That is a lot of possibilities. So odds are, yeah, that's the only time anyone's held that. But we could zoom out even more. Play a game of chess. The number of options there. A 1 followed by 120 zeros.
Whoa.
That's more than the atoms in the observable universe, which is only 1 followed by 80 zeros.
Cool. And I have a question for you. Is this your card?
Yes. Wow. How does he do it?
Friday. What does it take to keep the Park of Pianos in Kelowna ready to play? We check in with the tuner doing his rounds next.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
CBC Vancouver is the exclusive media partner of the 2024 Indian Summer Festival, July 4th to the 14th. The festival showcases over 80 artists across a spectrum of arts, from live concerts to discussions and visual arts displays. Tickets at indiansummerfest.ca. And never miss a special programming series, event, or contest. Subscribe to CBC Vancouver's e-newsletter and keep connected with us.
In pounding rain and blistering sun, Kelowna's park pianos are exposed to a lot.
And taking care of them is one man who makes it his mission that the pianos give as much joy and musical beauty as they can.
My name's Elmer Epp. I'm the guy that gets the pianos and makes them ready to play and hauls them around and puts them out there and picks them up at the end of the year. We have to use the big old ones that are 100 years old, and they are subject to the elements. So we have little roofs on them that try to keep them as dry as possible in case it rains. And they're not going to be perfect out here. They're going to be close to being in tune. If they get a little bit too bad, then I tune them.
And then it's up here.
You ever see anybody snarling when they're playing piano? They're usually smiling. That brings them joy.
I was actually a few years back, I was actually out at Stewart Park and I saw Steven Tyler come in and rocked out Dream On. And ever since then, I was like, oh, wouldn't it be the coolest thing to show up to London Piano, sit down, like this, and do something, and some people are like, yeah, that was awesome.
And a lot of creativity happens. I wonder if I could remember how to play a certain song, right? And so they sit down and it comes back to them and they go like, this is fun.
Yes! Nice. Giving back to his community.
Thanks for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6. You can watch this newscast on CBC Gem, our free app, as well as on YouTube and our website, cbc.ca/BC.
Janella Hamilton will have your next local news at 11 o'clock, right after the National. Good night. Enjoy the weekend. Stay safe.